Welcome, Wapham crew and new listeners. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a rocky mountain high, get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners, and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. It is Saturday, August 6th, Sunday, August 7th for those of you across the pond and beyond. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to you, and welcome to We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I am your host, TessaTNT, and we are broadcasting live from the Mile High Clubhouse tonight. I hope you guys had an awesome week so far and a wonderful beginning to your weekend. I got a little sunburnt. I went fishing yesterday, and it was awesome. I didn't catch anything, really didn't get any bites. I think I know the spot that I want to go to next time. I scoped it out on the way out. We hit two different spots during the day, but on the way out, I went over to the dam where the feed goes out, and it looks like a little bit of a jaunt, but I think it's a good place to go fishing. I did actually, you're not going to believe it, but I did catch a dead fish, and I basically hooked it, and I took a picture of it. If you look at my pictures on my Facebook page, you can see it, and it's kind of creepy as far as it looks pretty ill, doesn't look that long dead, and it has two different growths on it. I'm not sure what kind of parasite or barnacle is on there, but it's like a coral pink color. It's pretty weird, pretty interesting. But yeah, we had a good girls' day at the lake. The boys were sick. Now here I am, sick. But hey, the show must go on, and we're gonna do it to it. But yeah, it was a good day. I'm a little sun-chapped, but otherwise, it's good. I might have to pause a couple times throughout the show just to blow my nose, but it'll be all good. If you're listening to us live right now, you may be listening to us on Spreaker Radio, which you can find on Spreaker.com/we-r-paradox-medias-show. Or just go to Spreaker.com and look up We Are Paradox Media. That should work the same. Also, we are live on KPNL Radio, which you can find on KPNL Radio at kpnl-db.com. I do have to say, I'm super excited. One of my friends from there, who I believe he takes care of all the broadcasting and everything, his name is Steve Stockton. If you don't know who Steve Stockton is, you gotta Google it, and you gotta check out his YouTube pages. He does an amazing job on missing persons, mysteries, etc. But yes, now he, as well, is living in the Four Corners area. I'm not going to say where exactly he is, but super excited. He was in my neck of the woods the other day. Unfortunately, we couldn't meet up, but yeah, pretty soon going to get together with my friend. And yeah, we got a lot of places that we got to go and explore and discover and film and broadcast about. If you want to listen to us on your free time, whether you're working it, or working out, check us out once again under We Are Paradox Media, Spreaker, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Tumblr, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, Deezer, Podcast Addict, and Podcast Chaser. Our YouTube, I did reconnect them tonight. Not sure if we're off ground yet. If we are not off ground, it'll notify me and let me know I was not able to sync. But otherwise, go over there. Please subscribe. If you listen to any videos on our YouTube, please make sure you like any video that you listen to, as well as leave any comments of how we can improve or whatnot on the show. And also, if you'd like to have us have a certain guest on, be sure to email us at weareparadoxmedia@gmail.com, and we will try our best to get that guest on. So tonight I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Yes, it is story time with me, TessaTNT, and we're going to have fun. So Bram Stokers' Dracula, that's the first 2 hours, and then after that, we're going to do Reddit ghost stories. And it sounds like, I believe it's Blue is trying to tear something down out there. If you hear me sniffle a little bit, I apologize. So in the news, there's a lot of craziness in Gallup, New Mexico, not too far from here. They were having a parade, and a drunk driver went speeding through there. Also in, I believe it was Los Angeles, California, there was a high-speed accident, and it was actually a nurse from another state, and I'm thinking perhaps she was on her way back to wherever she was staying and fell asleep at the wheel. And you know how when you do that, sometimes you press your feet or you relax your feet. But I think she fell asleep and just pressed the gas because she was like pound straight through this intersection. It was very sad and scary. One lady that was at one of the pumps at the gas station across from that accident said a baby flew and landed basically right there where she was pumping gas. So that was a 13-month-old baby. The pregnant mother of this baby, she also died. Um, Several people died. Several people were severely injured. She's in the hospital right now. Um, and yeah, once she gets out of the hospital, she's going to jail. I feel so bad for her because those nurses work crazy hours. They worked so hard. I don't think she was inebriated at all. I think it was just like a lack of sleep, being a new area, etc. Because these nurses go everywhere. When Vern was in the hospital with his COVID and COVID-induced coma, we had nurses from Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, all over the place. So different nurses go to different places to help, I guess, when there's outbreaks or whatnot. So I don't know. Love and prayers out to everybody in that situation. It is so sad and scary. But no, I just feel like I don't think she was inebriated in any way, except for perhaps a lack of sleep and working so much. COVID is relentless, and so that's very sad. And then you heard our President Biden broke out once more with COVID. For the second time, he's testing negative once more, but as a precautionary thing, they're going to keep him under wraps. He's going to be secluded once more for a little bit longer. And then Pelosi, she had to take her trip to China. And one of those stops were Taiwan. China's very upset that she stopped there. They're like, what did this even help? So they've been firing around the island that Taiwan is on, or the island of Taiwan. Sorry, the hellhounds are restless at the moment. I'm going to have to message my daughter and tell her, hey, can you do something about these dogs? But yeah, Pelosi went over. China got very upset. They didn't want her to stop there. I think Newt Gingrich or somebody a long, long time ago was the last time anybody stopped there. But yeah, even though they said if you go there, it's going to cause a lot of havoc, she went there anyways. And even people are asking, how could you guys allow this? And they're like, well, we don't talk to or regard or disregard or anything. Different places people are going to go that are on the House and Senate or whatnot. So yeah, they just let her do her thing like they should have. President or whoever said, hey, maybe you shouldn't go there because China's already kind of hand in hand with Russia over here. And if we do this, like, for sure, World War III is what I'm thinking. And it's been looking like that for quite a while, especially the way China has been holding on to Russia's hand and just supporting them and whatnot. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. Flooding. So there's been flooding from the Midwest all the way to the West. So from Kentucky to California, there's massive flooding going on in Death Valley right now. There's a lot of stranded people, stranded cars, different things like that happening. We get rain off and on here, but it hasn't been anything like the past monsoons that we've had, but it's all part of climate change and different things like that. Alrighty. Well, tomorrow night, I'm super excited. We have Mr. Jeff Hilliard on. You guys have heard his music. He's a really awesome guy. The more I learn about him, the more I love him, and it just really amazes me. the music he does, the service he does for his fellow humans, and what a funny guy he is, you know? I don't know if you guys listened to Dr. Demento as kids or, Weird Al Yankovic, etc. For me, Jeff Hilliard is like the Weird Al of our century or whatnot. So I don't know. I'm pretty excited about that show. We're going to talk about not only his epic music, but his epic life. Because it all is epic, hand in hand. And so I think I'm going to edit the title and stuff on that because I should have put epic life and music, but I just put epic music. So I got to fix the flyer, got to fix the title, and do that because it's been bothering me for the last 24 hours. I'm like, man, but so much to do. One man band going on here. Alrighty. So I'm thinking about, is there any other news that I'm forgetting? Oh, yes. Give me a moment. Okay, so the U.S. Senate Democrats advance $430 or $430 billion as far as climate change. I think it's a little too late, you guys. We've been talking about this for how many years, and now you're trying to get on the train? Woot woot. I think it's a little too late to leave port, but maybe it'll make it a little less obtrusive. I don't know. That's how it is. Everybody thinks about the money. Are you going to be able to drink or eat or live in money? Yes, you do kind of live in money and eat money, etc., because it takes money to get these things. But at the same time, what about the climate, which has been a thing for quite some time? And it's going crazy, apeshit crazy, batshit crazy. So Alex Jones, I don't know if you guys recall this, but he was totally against the Sandy Hook shooting. He was saying it was a total fraud, that this really wasn't happening, and boy, did he get a slap in the face. So in Austin, Texas, far-right conspiracy theorist Alex Jones pulled through the first of several trials against him that could decimate his personal fortune and media empire in his usual way, loud, aggressive, and talking about conspiracies both in and out of the courtroom. It was business as usual for the gravelly-voiced, barrel-chested Jones. But by courtroom standards, his erratic and, at times, disrespectful behavior was unusual and potentially complicated for the legal process. Jones and his media company, Free Speech Systems, were ordered Friday to pay $45.2 million in punitive damages on top of $4.11 million in compensatory damages to the parents of 6-year-old Jesse Lewis, who was killed with 19 other first graders and 6 educators in the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings in Newton, Connecticut, and significantly more could be on the way. The total damages of nearly $50 million was significantly less than the $150 million in damages Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis were seeking. Jones faces 2 more Sandy Hook trials to determine damages later this year. One for parents of a 6-year-old boy in an Austin court, and another for 8 families in Connecticut. Heslin and Lewis have testified that Jones' constant push of false claims that the shooting was a hoax or staged made the decade a living hell of death threats, online abuse, and unrelenting trauma inflicted by Jones and his followers. After years of false hoax claims, Jones admitted under oath that the shooting was 100% real and even shook hands with the parents. But the bombastic version of Jones was always lurking under the surface or even on full display away from the courthouse. During a break on the first day, he held an impromptu news conference just a few feet from the courtroom doors, declaring the proceedings a kangaroo court and show trial, railroading his fight for free speech under the First Amendment. On the first day, he arrived at the courthouse with "Save the First" written on silver tape over his mouth. When he came to the courthouse, it was always with a security detail of 3 or 4 guards. Jones, who wasn't in court for the verdict, often skipped testimony to appear on his daily InfoWars program, where the attacks on the judge and jury continued. During one show, Jones said the jury was pulled from a group of people who don't know what planet they live on. That clip was shown to the jury, so was a snapshot from his InfoWars website showing Judge Maya Guro Gamble engulfed in flames. I think it's Guerra Gamble. She laughed at that. Jones was only slightly less combative in court. He was the only witness to testify in his defense. Gamble warned Jones' lawyers before it even started that he tried to turn it into a performance. She would clear the courtroom and shut down the live stream broadcasting of the trial to the world. When Jones arrived for Lewis' testimony, Gamble asked if he was chewing gum, a violation of a strict rule in her courtroom. She'd scolded his attorney and Dino Reynal several times already. That led to a testy exchange. Jones said he wasn't chewing gum. Gamble said she could see his mouth moving. Jones opened wide and leaned over the defense table to show her a gap in his mouth where he'd had a tooth extracted. Jones insisted he was only massaging the hole with his tongue. "Don't show me," the judge said. Some legal experts said they were surprised by Jones's behavior and questioned whether it was a calculated risk to post his appeal to fans. "It's the most bizarre behavior I have ever seen at trial," said Barry Covert, Buffalo, New York First Amendment lawyer. "In my opinion, Jones is a money-making juggernaut. Crazy like a fox," Covert said. "The bigger the spectacle, the better." Kevin Goldberg, a First Amendment specialist at the Maryland-based Freedom Forum, said he found it hard to imagine what Jones might be thinking and what benefit he could derive from his behavior. "I don't know what it is designed to accomplish other than being on brand for Alex Jones," said Goldberg. "This seems to be a man who has built his brand on disrespecting the institutions of government and this court. Defendants at trial are often given some leeway because they have so much to stake. Prison in criminal cases and, in Jones's civil trial, potential financial ruin. Monetary sanctions or even post-trial contempt charges are also a possibility. Gamble had to be careful how she handled it all," Covert said. And I remember that even though they kept warning him and telling him that this was real, he just kept up with his shenanigans of how it was a conspiracy, even though he saw all of this evidence before him. "So Jones's bizarre behavior is putting the judge in a very difficult box," said Covert. "She doesn't want to appear to put her finger on the scales of justice." Jones skipped Heslin's testimony when he described for the jury holding his dead son in his arms with a bullet hole through his head. That is so freaking sad. Heslin said he wanted to confront Jones face to face and called his absence that day cowardly. Jones was instead appearing on his daily broadcast. Jones was in the room when Lewis took the stand, sitting barely 10 feet, aka 3 meters, away as she looked directly at him. "My son existed. I am not deep state," she said of the conspiracy theory of a shadowy network of federal workers running the government. "I know you know that," Lewis said. When Lewis asked Jones if he thought she was an actor, Jones answered no, but was cut off by Gamble, who scolded him for speaking out of turn. At the end of that day, Jones and the parents shook hands. Lewis even handed Jones a sip of water to help calm a persistent cough Jones said was caused by a torn larynx. Her attorney Wesley Ball quickly stepped in to break it up. "No!" Ball snapped at Jones. "You are not doing this." Jones was the only witness in his defense. His testimony pushed the rules of the court so often that the plaintiffs openly questioned whether Jones and his attorneys were trying to sabotage the proceedings and force a mistrial. They filed a motion for sanctions against them after Jones claimed he was bankrupt, which attorneys dispute and was off limits in testimony. And I have to say, like, I haven't watched really anything of Jones. I remember when 9/11 came out, he was one of the people that were propagating that, which I believe a lot of the conspiracies going on with that, the energy directed weapons, etc. But he's been a part of this certain station that my little brother listens to. He recently directed me there for, I can't remember what it was. It was something about martial law. And I saw Jones on there. And the Jones I saw back in the day, still very heavy set, whatever guy, doesn't really look healthy, but just to look at his face, like, not only is he not looking healthy, but he's starting to get, luggage around his eyes. He's looking very tired, very distraught. I don't know. I don't know why he continued with this except for ego. Ego's a really big thing. So at one point, Jones appeared flabbergasted when the family's attorney announced that Jones' legal team had mistakenly sent them 2 years' worth of data from his cell phone. A massive data dump, they said, should have been produced in discovery but wasn't. They said it proved he'd been receiving texts and emails about Sandy Hook and his media company's finances that he hadn't turned over under court orders. This is your Perry Mason moment, Jones snapped. Plaintiff's attorney, Mark Bankston, said Thursday that the House committee investigating the January 6, 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol had requested those materials and that he intended to give it to them. So the January 6th committee first subpoenaed Jones in November, demanding a deposition and documents related to his efforts to spread misinformation about the 2020 election and a rally on the day of the attack. During the trial, Jones often spoke out of turn and was cut off when he veered into conspiracies ranging from the September 11th terror attacks being staged to fake effort of the United Nations on world depopulation. He continued to call into question some of the biggest events and significant government institutes in American life. This, the judge told him, is not your show. But yeah, that's when I first heard about him, was during the 9/11 attacks and so much afterwards. Ever since then, like, he's all over the place, but I don't like to feed the demons, so I don't attain to those things, but it's been pretty intriguing. Very, very intriguing. So I'm going to take a drink and a couple puffs. In the meantime, hey, I hope you guys are enjoying the show. Oy vey. So I don't know if you guys saw, but I found a couple things. I only posted one because the other one was more just like directed at Frankenstein. But this most recent one, hello, beautiful Sister Sandra. But I posted, I don't know why this did this. Very weird. Okay, so new news. Before I tell you about the posting, I just bought a new laptop. And I needed to because this one has a recall on the battery. Sometimes it shuts off in the middle of the show, and it's just been really wonky lately. So I did purchase a new laptop. I'm super excited about it. But I hope it's sounding better and that there's no skipping or anything. And I forgot to put in the HDMI cord. So I'm just on Wi-Fi, which DS, I'm not going to say his name, but those of you that know him know who DS is, said, do not ever do Wi-Fi. But I'm thinking it's better because my HDMI cords have been torn up from a certain bedroom. in and out traffic, etc. Um, and it's just like in the middle of the hallway. If I had it posted on the walls or whatever, it wouldn't have received that damage. But I'm thinking that could perhaps be it. If we do chunk up at all during the show, please let me know, and I'll order a new modem because that's probably what it is. But I'm hoping it's going good because we got Jeff Hilliard on the show tomorrow night, and it's going to be epic. Very epic. Alrighty. So we shall go back to our story time. We're quite a ways in there. I believe we're on chapter 18. I'm not sure how far this goes. Yeah, we'll see what we see, because Dracula is quite a large story. Let's see. Frankenstein. Yep, preface. 323. And we're at 201, so we still have 100 or so pages to go. But I've been loving this book, and I actually saw the other night on some investigatory show, I don't know if it was Ghost Adventures or Fear Factory or who it was, but somebody that went over there said, "Oh, well, this is where Bram Stoker used to live in Ireland." I think it was oh my gosh, what is the name of that show? Something Fear. I'll have to look it up. But yes, I was like, wow, I didn't even realize that Bram Stoker was Irish, but that's pretty cool. Mina Harker's Journal, 30 September. When we met in Dr. Seward's study 2 hours after dinner, which had been at 6 o'clock, we unconsciously formed a sort of board or committee. Professor Van Helsing took the head of the table, to which Dr. Seward motioned him as he came into the room. He made me sit next to him in his right, and asked me to act as secretary. Jonathan sat next to me, opposite us were Lord Godalming, Dr. Seward, and Mr. Morris, Lord Godalming being next to the professor, and Dr. Seward in the center. The professor said, "I may, I suppose, take it that we are all acquainted with the facts that are in these papers." We all expressed assent, and we went on. "Then it were, I think, good that I tell you something of the kind of enemy with which we have to deal. I shall then make known to you something of the history of this man, which has been ascertained for me, so we then can discuss how we shall act, and can take our measure according. There are such beings as vampires. Some of us have evidence of that they exist. Even had we not the proof of our own unhappy experience, the teachings and the records of the past give proof enough for sane peoples. I admit that at first I was skeptic. Were it not that through long years I have trained myself to keep an open mind, I could not have believed until such time as that a fact thunder on my ear. See, see, I prove, I prove. Alas, I know at the first what now I know. Nay, had I ever guessed at him, one so precious life had been spared to many of us who did love her. But that is gone, and we must so work that other poor souls perish not, whilst we can save. The Nosferatu do not like the bee when the sting once. He is only stronger, and being stronger, have yet more power to work evil. This vampire which is amongst us is of himself so strong and perfect as 20 men. He is of cunning more than mortal, and his cunning be the growth as 20 men. He is of cunning of the ages. He have still the aids of necromancy, which is, as his etymology imply, the divination by the dead, and all the dead that he can come nigh to are for him at command. He is brute, and more than brute, he is devil and callous. In the heart of him is naught. he can, within limitations, appear at will, and where the heart of him is not, and in many forms that are to him, he can, within his range, direct the elements, the storm, the fog, the thunder. He can command all the meaner things, the rat, and the owl, and the bat, the moth, and the fox, and the wolf. He can grow and become small, and he can at times vanish and come unknown. How then are we to begin our strife to destroy him? How shall we find his where? And having found it, how can we destroy? My friends, this is much. It is a terrible task that we are to undertake, and there may be consequence to make the brave shudder. For if we fail in this, our fight he must surely win, and then where end we? Life is nothing's, I heed him not, but to fail here is not mere life or death. It is that we become as him, that we henceforth become foul things of the night, like him, without heart or conscience, preying on the bodies and the souls of those we love best. To us forever our gates of heaven shut, for who shall open them to us again? We go on for all time abhorred by all, a blot on the face of God's sunshine, an arrow in the side of him who died for man. We are face to face with duty, and in such case must we shrink. For me, I say no. But then I am old, and life, with his sunshine, his fair places, his song of birds, his music, and his love, lie far behind. You others are young. Some have seen sorrow, but there are fair days yet in store. What say you? Whilst he was speaking, Jonathan had taken my hand. I feared oh so much that the appalling nature of our danger was overcoming him when I saw his hand stretch out. But it was life to me to feel its touch. So strong, so self-reliant, so resolute, a brave man's hand can speak for itself if it does not even need a woman's love to hear its music. Excuse me while I blow my nose really quick. When the professor had done speaking, my husband looked in my eyes, and I in his. There was no need for speaking between us. I answer for Mina and myself, he said. Count me in, Professor, said Mr. Quincy Morris, iconically as usual. I am with you, said Lord Godalming, for Lucy's sake, if for no other reason. Dr. Seward simply nodded. The professor stood up, and after laying his golden crucifix on the table, held out his hand on either side. I took his right hand, and Lord Godalming his left. Jonathan held my right with his left and stretched across to Mr. Morris. So as we all took hands, our solemn compact was made. I felt my heart icy cold, but it did not even occur to me to draw back. We resumed our places, and Dr. Van Helsing went on with a sort of cheerfulness which showed that the serious work had begun. It was to be taken as gravely and in as businesslike a way as any other transaction of life. Well, you know what we have to contend against, but we, too, are not without strength. We have our side power of combination, the power denied to the vampire kind. We have resources of science. We are free to act and think, and the hours of the day and the night are ours equally. In fact, so far as our powers extend, they are unfettered, and we are free to use them. We have self-devotion in cause and an end to achieve which is not a selfish one. These things are much. Now let us see how far the general powers arrayed against us are restrict, and how the individual cannot. In fine, let us consider the limitations of the vampire in general, and of this one in particular. All we have to go upon are traditions and superstitions, These do not at all first appear much, when the matter is one of life and death, nay, of more either life or death. Yet must we be satisfied in the first place, because we have to be, no other means is at our control, and secondly, because after all these things, tradition and superstition, are everything. Does not the belief in vampires rest for others, though not, alas, for us on them? A year ago, which of us would have received such a possibility in the midst of our scientific, skeptical, matter-of-fact 19th century? We even scouted a belief that we saw justified under our very eyes. Take it then that the vampire and the belief in his limitations and his cure rest for the moment on the same base, for let me tell you, he is known everywhere that men have been. In old Greece, in old Rome, he flourished in Germany all over, in France, in India, even in the Corsonese, and in China, so far from us in all ways. There even is he. The peoples fear him at this day. He hath followed the wake of the berserker Icelander and devil-begotten Hun, the Slav, the Saxon, the Magyar. So far, then, we have all we may act upon. And let me tell you that very much of the beliefs are justified by what we have seen in our own so unhappy experience. The vampire live on, and cannot die by the mere passing of the time. He can flourish, when that he can fatten on the blood of the living. Even more, we have seen amongst us that he can even grow younger, that his vital faculties grow strenuous, and seem as though they refresh themselves, when his special pagulum is plenty. But he cannot flourish without his diet. He eat not as others. Even friend Jonathan, who lived with him for weeks, did never see him eat, never. He throws no shadows, he make in the mirror no reflect, as again Jonathan observed. He has the strength of many in his hand. Witness again Jonathan when he shut the door against the wolves, and when he helped him from the diligence too. He can transform himself to a wolf, as we gather from the ship the diligence too. So as we gather from the ship arrival in Whitby, where he tear open the dog, he can be as Bat, as Madam Meenham saw on the window of Whitby, and as friend John saw him fly by from this so near house, and as my friend Quincy saw him at the window of Miss Lucy. He can come in mists which he create. That noble ship's captain proved him of this, but, from what we know, the distance he can make this mist is limited, and it can only be round himself. He come on moonlight rays as elemental dust, as again Jonathan saw those sister in the castle of Dracula. He became so small, we ourselves saw Miss Lucy, ere she was at Keys, slip through a hair-breadth space at the tomb door. He can, when once he find his way, come out from anything or into anything, no matter how close it be bound or even fused up with fire, solder you call it. He can see in the dark, no small power this in a world which is one half shut from the light. Ah, but hear me through. He can do all these things, yet he is not free. Nay, he is even more prisoner than the slave of the galley, than the madman in his cell. He cannot go where he lists. He who is not of nature has yet to obey some of nature's laws. Why, we know not. He may not enter anywhere at first unless there be someone of the household to bid him to come. Though afterwards he can come as he please, his power ceases, as does that of all evil things, at the coming of the day. Only a certain time can he have limited freedom. If he be not of the place whither he is bound, he can only change himself at noon or at exact sunrise or sunset. These things are we told, and in this record of ours we have proof of inference. Thus, whereas he can do as he will within his limits, when he have his earth home, his coffin home, his hell home, the place unhallowed, as we saw when he went to the grave of the suicide at Whitby, still at other time he can only change when the time come. It is said, too, that he can only pass running water at the slack or the flood of tide. Then there are things which so afflict him that he has no power as the garlic that we know of. And as for things sacred as this symbol, my crucifix, that was amongst us, even now, when we resolve, to them he is nothing, but in their presence he take his place far off and silent with respect. There are others, too, which I shall tell you of, lest in our seeking we may need them. The branch of wild rose on his coffin keep him that he move not from it. A sacred bullet fired into the coffin kill him so that he be true dead. And as for the stake through him, we know already of its peace, or the cut off head that giveth rest. We have seen it with our eyes. Thus, when we find the habitation of this man that was, we can confine him to his coffin and destroy him. If we obey what we know, but he is clever, I have asked my friend Arminius of Budapest University to make his record, and, from all the means that are, he tell me of what he has been. He must, indeed, have been that voivode Dracula who won his name against the Turk over the great river on the very frontier of Turkeyland. If it be so, then was he no common man? For in that time, and for centuries after, he was spoken of as the cleverest and the most cunning, as well as the bravest of the sons of the land beyond the forest. That mighty brain and that iron resolution went with him to his grave, and are even now arrayed against us. The Draculas were, says Arminius, a great and noble race, though now and again were scions who were held by their covils to have had dealings with evil one. They learned his secrets in Scholomance amongst the mountains over Lake Hermannstadt, where the devil claims the 10th scholar as his due. In the records are such words as Strigoica, witch, Ordog, and Bokel. Satan in hell, and in one manuscript this very Dracula is often as vampire, which we all understand too well. There have been from the loins of this very one great man and good woman, and their graves make sacred the earth where alone this foulness can dwell. For it is not the least of its terrors that this evil thing is rooted deep in all good. In soil barren of holy memories it cannot rest. Whilst they were talking, Mr. Morris was looking steadily at the window, and he now got up quietly and went out of the room. There was a little pause, and then the professor went on. And now we must settle what we do. We have here much data, and we must proceed to lay out our campaign. We know from the inquiry of Jonathan that from the castle of Whitby came 50 boxes of earth, all of which were delivered to Carfax. We also know that at least some of these boxes have been removed. It seems to me that our first step should be to ascertain whether all the rest remain in the house beyond that wall where we look today, or whether any more have been removed. If the latter, we must trace. Here we were interrupted in a very startling way. Outside the house came some of a pistol shot. The glass of the window was shattered with a bullet, which ricocheted from the top of the embrasure, struck the far wall of the room. I am afraid I am at heart a coward, for I shrieked out. The men all jumped up to their feet. Lord Godalming flew over to the window and threw up the sash. As he did so, we heard Mr. Morris's voice without. Sorry, I fear I've alarmed you. I shall come in and tell you about it." A minute later he came up and said, "It was an idiotic thing of me to do, and I ask your pardon. Mrs. Harker, most sincerely, I fear I must have frightened you terribly. But the fact is that while the professor was talking, there came a big bat and sat in the window sill. I've got such a horror of the damned brutes from recent events that I cannot stand them, and I went out to have a shot, as I have been doing of late evenings wherever I have seen one. You must to laugh at me for it then ought." "Did you hit it?" asked Dr. Van Helsing. "I don't know, I fancy not, for it flew away into the woods." Without saying any more, he took his seat, and the professor began to resume his statement. "We must trace each of these boxes, and then we are ready. We must either capture or kill this monster in his lair, or we must, so to speak, sterilize the earth, so that no more he can seek safety in it. Thus in the end we may find him in his form of man between the hours of noon and sunset, and so engage with him when he is at his most weak. And now for you, Madam Mina. This night is the end until all be well. You are too precious to us to have such risk. When we part tonight, you no more must question. We shall tell you all good in time. We are men and are able to bear, but you must be our star and our hope, and we shall act all the more free that you are not in danger such as we are." All the men, even Jonathan, seemed relieved, but it did not seem to me good that they should brave danger and perhaps lessen their safety. Strength being the best safety, through care of me, but their minds were made up, and, though it was a bitter pill for me to swallow, I could say nothing save to accept their chivalrous care of me. Mr. Morris resumed in discussion. "As there is no time to lose, I vote we have to look at his house right now. Time is either everything with him, and swift action on our part may save another victim." I own that my heart began to fail me when the time of action came so close, but I did not say anything, for I had a greater fear that if I appeared as a drag or hindrance to their work, they might even leave me out of their counsels altogether. They have now gone off to Carfax, with means to get into the house. Manlike, they have told me to go to bed and sleep, as if a woman can sleep when those she loves are in danger. I shall lie down and pretend to sleep, lest Jonathan have added anxiety about me when he returns. Dr. Seward's Diary. 1 October, 4 a.m. Just as we were about to leave the house, an urgent message was brought to me from Renford to know if I would see him at once, as he had something of the utmost importance to say to me. I told the messenger to say that I would attend to his wishes in the morning. I was busy just at the moment. The attendant added, "He seems very opportunate, sir. I have never seen him so eager. I don't know but what, if you don't see him soon, he will have one of his violent fits." I knew the man would not have said this without some cause, so I said, "All right, I'll go now." Then I asked the others to wait a few minutes for me, as I had to go and see my patient. "Take me with you, friend John," said the professor. "His case in your diary interests me much, and it had bearing, too, now and again on our case. I should much like to see him, and especially when his mind is disturbed." "May I come also?" asked Lord Godalming. "Me too," said Quincey Morris. I nodded, and we all went down the passage together. We found him in a state of considerable excitement, but far more rational in his speech and manner than I had seen him ever. There was an unusual understanding of himself, which was unlike anything I had ever met with in a lunatic, and he took it for granted that his reasons would prevail with others entirely sane. We all four went into the room, but none of the others at first said anything. His request was that I would at once release him from the asylum and send him home. This he backed up with arguments regarding his complete recovery, and adduced his own existing sanity. "I appeal to your friends," he said. "They will perhaps not mind sitting in judgment on my case. By the way, you have not introduced me." I was so much astonished that the oddness of introducing a madman in an asylum did not strike me at the moment, and, besides, there was a certain dignity in the man's manner, so much of the habit of equality, that I at once made the introduction. "Lord Godalming, Professor Van Helsing, Mr. Quincy Morris of Texas, Mr. Renfield." He shook hands with each of them, saying in turn, "Lord Godalming, I had the honour of seconding your father at the Wyndham. I grieve to know, by your holding the title, that he is no more. He is a man loved and honoured by all who knew him, and in his youth was, I have heard, an inventor of a rum punch, much patronized on Derby night. Mr. Morris, you should be proud of your great state. Its reception into the Union was precedent which may have far-reaching effects hereafter. When the pole and the tropics may hold allegiance of the stars and stripes, the power of treaty may yet prove a vast engine of enlargement. When the Monroe Doctrine takes its true place as political fable, what shall any man say of his pleasure at meeting Van Helsing, sir? I make no apology for dropping all forms of conventional prefix. When an individual has revolutionized therapeutics by his discovery of the continuous evolution of brain matter, conventional forms are unfitting, since they would seem to limit him are one of a class. You gentlemen, who by nationality, by hereditary, or by possession of natural gifts, are fitted to hold your respective places in the moving world, I take to witness that I am as sane as at least the majority of men who are full possession of their liberties. And I am sure that you, Dr. Seward, humanitarian and medical jurist, as well as scientist, will deem it moral duty to deal with me as one be considered as under exceptional circumstances." He made his last appeal with a courtly air of conviction which was not without its own charm. I think we were all staggered. For my own part, I was under the conviction, despite my knowledge of the man's character and history, that his reason had been restored, and I felt under my strong impulse to tell him that I was satisfied as to his sanity, and would see about the necessary formalities for his release in the morning. I thought it better to wait, however, before making so grave a statement, for of old I knew the sudden changements to which his particular patient was liable. So I contended with myself with making a general statement that he appeared to be improved very rapidly, that I would have a longer chat with him in the morning, and would then see what I could do in the direction of meeting his wishes. This did not at all satisfy him, for he said quickly, "But I fear, Dr. Seward, that you hardly apprehend my wish. I desire to go at once, here now, this very hour, this very moment, if I may. Time presses, and in our implied agreement with the old stipend, it is of the essence of the contract. I am sure it is only necessary to put before this admiral a practitioner as Dr. Seward, so simple, yet so momentous a wish, to ensure its fulfillment." He looked at me keenly, and, seeing the negativity in my face, turned to the others and scrutinized them closely. Not meeting any sufficient response, he went on, "Is it possible that I have erred in my supposition?" "You have," I said frankly, but at the same time, as I felt brutally, there was a considerable pause, and then he said slowly, "Then I suppose
I must only shift my ground of request. Let me ask for this concession. Boon, privilege, what you will. I am content to implore in such a case not on personal grounds, but for the sake of others. I am not at liberty to give you the whole of my reasons, but you may, I assure you, take it from me that they are good ones, sound and unselfish, and spring with the highest sense of duty. Would you look, sir, into my heart? You would approve of the full sentiments which emanate in me. Nay, more, you would count me amongst the best and truest of your friends.
Again he looked at us all keenly. I had a growing conviction that this sudden change of his entire intellectual method was but yet another phase of his madness, and so determined to let him go on a little longer, knowing from experience that he would, like all lunatics, give himself away in the end. Van Helsing was gazing at him with a look of the utmost intensity, his bushy eyebrows almost meeting with the fixed concentration of his look. He said to Renfield in a tone which did not surprise me at all, but only when I thought of it afterwards, for it was of one addressing an equal.
Can you not tell frankly your reason for wishing to be free tonight? I will undertake that if you will satisfy even me, a stranger with prejudice, and with the habit of keeping an open mind, Dr. Seward will give you, at his own risk and his own responsibility, the privilege you seek.
He shook his head sadly, and with a look of poignant regret on his face, the professor went on.
Come, sir, bethink yourself. You claimed the privilege of reason in the highest degree, since you seek to address us with your complete reasonableness. You do this, whose insanity we have reason to doubt, since you are not yet released from medical treatment for this very defect. If you will not help us in our effort to choose the wisest course, how can we perform the duty which you yourself put upon us? Be wise and help us, and if we can, we shall aid you to achieve your wish.
He still shook his head as he said,
Dr. Van Helsing, I have nothing to say. Your argument is complete, and if you were free to speak, I shall not hesitate a moment. But I am not my own master in the matter. I can only ask you trust me. If I am refused, the responsibility does not rest with me.
I thought it was now time to end the scene, which was becoming too comically grave, so I went towards the door, simply saying, Come, my friends, we have work to do tonight. Good night. As, however, I got near the door, a new change came over the patient. He moved towards me so quickly that for the moment I feared that he was about to make another homicidal attack. My fears, however, were groundless, for he held up his two hands imploringly and made his petition in moving manner. As he saw that very excess of his emotions was militating against him. By restoring us more to our old relations, he became still more demonstrative. I glanced at Van Helsing and saw my conviction reflected in his eyes, so I became a little more fixed in my manner, if not more stern, and motioned to him that his efforts were unavailing. I had previously seen something of the same constantly growing excitement in him when he had made some request of which at the time he had thought much, such, for instance, as when he wanted a cat. I was prepared to see the collapse into the same sullen acquiescence on this occasion. My expectation was not realized, for when he found that his appeal would not be successful, he got into quite a frantic condition. He threw himself onto his knees and held up his hands, wringing them in the plaintive supplication, and poured forth a torrent of entreaty, with the tears rolling down his cheeks and his whole face in form expressive of the deepest emotion.
Let me entreat you, Dr. Seward. Oh, let me implore you to let me out of this house at once. Send me away, how you will and where you will. Send keepers that will with me with whips and chains. Let them take me on the strait waistcoast, manacled and leg-ironed, even to a goal. But let me go out of this. You don't know what you do by keeping me here. I'm speaking from the depths of my heart. of my very soul. You don't know whom you wrong or how, and I may not tell you. Woe is me. I may not tell. By all you hold sacred, by all you hold dear, by your love that is lost, by your hope that lives, for the sake of the Almighty, take me out of this and save my soul from guilt. Can't you hear me, man? Can't you understand? Will you never learn? Don't you know that I am sane and earnest now, that I am no lunatic in a mad fit, but a sane man fighting for his soul? Oh, hear me, let me go, let me go, let me go.
I thought that the longer this went on, the wilder he would get, and so would bring on a fit. So I took him by the hand and raised him up. Come, I said sternly, no more of this. We have had quite enough already. Get to your bed and try to behave more discreetly. He suddenly stopped and looked at me intently for several moments. Then, without a word, he rose, and moving over, sat down on the side of the bed. The collapse had come, as on former occasions, just as I had experienced. When I was leaving the room, last of our party, he said to me in a quiet, well-bred voice, You will, I trust, Dr. Seward, do me the justice to bear in mind, later on, that I did what I could to convince you tonight.
On that note, boys and girls, we're going to go to our first music break. On this break, we have Miss Mia Savage, originally hailing from Phoenix, Arizona, now hailing from Durango, Colorado, with Antidote for Savages, Bury Me in Heaven, Your Skeleton, Singing to Your Grave in Our New Reality. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break. Am I back? Can you hear me now? Oh, thank goodness. That scared the crap out of me. So I can hear out of the speakers, so I messed around a little bit. Sorry for the delay. That scared me. All right, so thank you so much for joining us on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. Sorry, I'm pretty sick tonight. I'm hoping it's not the H4, H5 thing going on. Hoping it's just like the cold before the storm of school starting and kids going back to the petri dish and, all that fun stuff. But that was Miss Mia Savage from Phoenix, Arizona, no hilling in Durango, Arizona, with Antidote for Savages. I'm so glad you guys are able to hear her because she is freaking amazing. Tomorrow night we have another amazing artist, Mr. Jeff Hilliard. I would have played him tonight, but I'm going to play him tomorrow night during his very own show. I'm super excited to talk to him. Not only is he an epic artist, he's my new Weird Al Yankovic, but he's also a really good person, and I can just see that by looking at him. But I'm super excited just to talk to him and connect with him, and hopefully the brand new friendship is going to be awesome. Alrighty. So now we are at chapter, I want to say 20. Let me look. I'm so bad with Roman numerals. Ooh. It's bringing up some slip. I'd like to listen to that. So chapter 19, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 1 October, 5 a.m. I went with the pantry to the search with an easy mind, for I think I never saw Mina so absolutely strong and well. I'm so glad that she consented to hold back and let us men do the work. However, it was a dread to me that she was in this fearful business at all. And now that her work is done, and that it is due to her energy and brains and foresight, and that the whole story part is finished, and that she can henceforth leave the rest to us. We were, I think, all a little upset by the scene with Mr. Renfield. When we came away from his room, we were silent till we got back to the study. Then Mr. Moore said to Dr. Seward, "Say, Jack, if that man was an attempting a bluff, he's about the sanest lunatic I ever saw. I'm not sure, but I believe that he had some serious purpose, and if he had, it was pretty rough on him not to get a chance." Lord Godalming and I were silent, but Mr. Van Helsing added,
"My dear friend, you know more of lunatics than I do, and I'm glad of it, for I feared that if it had been to me to decide, I would before that last hysterical outburst have given him free. But we live and learn, and in our present task we must take no chance, as my friend Quincy would say, all is best as they are. Dr. Seward seemed to them both in a dreamy kind of way. I don't know but that I agree with you. If that man had been an ordinary lunatic, I would have taken my chance of trusting him, but he seems so mixed up with the Count in an indexy kind of way that I am afraid of doing anything wrong by helping his fads. I can't forget how I prayed with almost equal fervour that a cat and then tried to tear my throat out with his teeth. Besides, he called the Count Lord and Master, and he may want to get out to help him in some diabolical way. That horrid thing that the wolves and the rats and his own kind to help him, so I suppose he isn't above trying to use a respectable lunatic. He certainly did seem earnest, though. I only hope we have done what is best. These things, in conjunction with the work we have in hand, help to unnerve a man." The professor stepped over, and laying a hand on his shoulder, said in his grave, kindly way, "My friend John, have no fear. We are trying to do our duty in a very sad and terrible case. We can only do as we deem best. What else have we to hope for, except the pity of the good God? Lord Godalming had slipped away for a few seconds, but he returned. He held up a little silver whistle as he remarked, "The old place may be full of rats, and if so, got an antidote for coal." Having passed the wall, we took on our way to the house, taking care to keep in the shadows of the trees on the lawn when the moonlight shone out. When we got to the porch, the professor opened his bag and took out a lot of things, which he laid on the step, sorting them into 4 little groups, evidently one for each. Then he spoke. "My friends, we are going into a terrible danger. We need arms of many kinds. Our enemy is not merely spiritual. Remember that he has the strength of 20 men, and that, though our necks or our windpipes are of the common kind, and therefore breakable and crushable, his is not amendable to mere strength. A stronger man, or a body of men more strong in all than him, can at certain times hold him, but yet they cannot hurt him as we can be hurt by him. We must, therefore, guard ourselves from his touch. Keep as near your heart." As he spoke, he lifted a little silver crucifix and held it out to me. I being nearest to him, "Put these flowers round your neck." Here he handed me a wreath of withered garlic blossoms. "For other enemies more mundane, this revolver and this knife, and for Aidan, these so more electric lamps, which you can fasten to your breast, and for all, and above all, the last, this, which we must not desecrate, needles." This was a portion of sacred wafer, which he put in an envelope and handed to me. Each of the others was similarly equipped. "Now," he said, "friend John, where are the skeleton keys? If so that we can open the door, we need not break house by the window, as before at Miss Lucy's." Dr. Seward tried 1 or 2 skeleton keys, his mechanical dexterity as a surgeon standing him in good stead. Presently he got one to suit. After a little play back and forward the bolt yielded, and with a rusty clang shot back. We pressed on the door, the rusty hinges creaked, and it slowly opened. It was startlingly like the image conveyed to me in Dr. Seward's diary of the opening of Miss Westenra's tomb. I fancy that the same idea seemed to strike the others, for with one accord they shrank back. The professor was the first to move forward and stepped into the door. "In manus tuis domine," he said, crossing himself as he passed over the threshold. We closed the door behind us, lest, when we should have lit our lamps, we might possibly attract attention from the road. The professor carefully tried the lock, in case we might not be able to open it from within, should we be in a hurry to make an exit. Then we all lit our lamps and proceeded in our search. The light from the tiny lamps fell in all sorts of odd forms as the rays crossed each other, or the opacity of our bodies threw great shadows. I could not for my life get away from the feeling that there was someone else amongst us. I suppose it was the recollection so powerfully brought home to me by the grim surroundings of that terrible experience in Transylvania. I think the feeling was common to us all, for I noticed that the others kept looking over their shoulders at every sound and every new shadow, just as I felt myself doing. The whole place was thick with dust. The floor was seemingly inches deep, except where there were recent footsteps in which, on holding down my lamp, I could see marks of hobnails where the dust was caked. The walls were fluffy and heavy with dust, and in the corners were masses of spider webs, whereon the dust had gathered till they looked like old tattered rags as the weight had poured them partly down. On a table in the hall was a great bunch of keys, with a time-yellowed label on each. They had been used several times, for on the table were several similar rents and blankets of dust, like that exposed when the professor lifted the keys. He turned to me and said,
You know this place, Jonathan. You've copied maps of it, and you know at least more than we do. Which is the way to the chapel?
I had an idea its direction, though on my former visit I had not been able to get admission to it, so I led the way, and after a few wrong turnings found myself opposite a low, arched oaken door, ribbed with iron bands.
"This is the spot,"
said the professor, as he turned his lamp on a small map of the house, copied from the file of my original correspondence regarding the purchase. With a little trouble we found the key on a bunch and opened the door. We were prepared for some unpleasantness, for as we were opening the door a faint, malodorous air seemed to exhale through the gaps. None of us ever expected such an odor as we encountered. None of the others had met the Count at all at close quarters, and when I had seen him he was either in the fasting stage of his existence in his room, or when he was glutted with fresh blood in a ruined building open to the air. But here the place was as small and close, and the long disuse had made the air stagnant and foul. There was an earthly smell of some dry miasma which came through the fouler air, but as to the odor itself, how shall I describe it? It was not alone that it was composed of all the ills of mortality and with the pungent, acrid smell of blood, but it seems as though corruption had become itself corrupt. Faugh! It sickens me to think of it. Every breath exhaled by that monster seemed to have clung to the place and intensified its loathsomeness. Under ordinary circumstances such a stench would have brought our enterprise to an end, but this was no ordinary case, and the high and terrible purpose in which we were involved gave us a strength which rose above merely physical considerations. After the involuntary shrinkage consequent on the first nauseous whiff, we one and all set about our work as though that loathsome place were a garden of roses. We made an accurate examination of the place, the professor saying as we began,
"The first thing is to see how many of the boxes are left. We must then examine every hole and corner and cranny and see if we cannot get some clue as to what has become of the rest."
A glance was sufficient to show how many remained, for the great earth chests were bulky, and there was no mistaking them. There were only 29 left out of the 50. Once I got a fright for seeing Lord Godalming suddenly turn and look out of the vaulted door into the dark passage beyond. I looked too, and for an instant my heart stood still. Somewhere, looking out from the shadow, I seemed to see the high lights of the Count's evil face, the ridge of the nose, the red eyes, the red lips, and the awful pallor. It was only for a moment, for as Lord Godalming said, "I thought I saw a face, but it was only the shadows," and resumed his inquiry, I turned my lamp in the direction and stepped into the passage. There was no sign of anyone, and as there were no corners, no doors, no aperture of any kind, but only the solid walls of the passage, there could be no hiding place even for him. I took it that fear had helped imagination and said nothing. A few moments later I saw Mr. Morris step suddenly back from a corner which he was examining. We all followed his movements with our eyes, for undoubtedly some nervousness was growing on us, and we saw a whole mass of phosphorescence, which twinkled like stars. We all instinctively drew back. The whole place was becoming alive with rats. For a moment or two we stood appalled, all save Lord Godalming, who was seemingly prepared for such an emergency. Rushing over to the great iron-bound oaken door, which Dr. Seward had described from the outside and which I had seen myself, he turned the key in the lock, drew the huge bolts, and swung the door open. Then, taking his little silver whist from his pocket, he blew a long, drawn-out shrill call. It was answered from behind Dr. Seward's house by the yelping of the dogs, and after about a minute 3 terriers came dashing round the corner of the house. Unconsciously, we had all moved towards the door, and as we moved I noticed that the dust had been much disturbed. The boxes, which had been taken out, had been brought this way, But even in the minute that had elapsed, the number of rats had vastly increased. They seemed to swarm over the place all at once, till the lamplight shining on their moving dark bodies and glittering, baleful eyes made the place look like a bank of earth set with fireflies. The dog dashed on, but at the threshold suddenly stopped and snarled, and then simultaneously lifted their noses, began to howl in the most lugubrious fashion. The rats were multiplying in thousands and moved out. Lord Godalming lifted one of the dogs and, carrying him in, placed him on the floor. The instant his feet touched the ground, he seemed to recover his courage and rushed at his natural enemies. They fled before him so fast that before he had shaken the life out of a score, the other dogs, who had been by now lifted in the manner the same, had but small prey ere the whole mass had vanished. With their going, it seemed as if some evil presence had departed, for the dogs frisked about and barked merrily as they made sudden darts at their prostrate foes, and turned them over and tossed them in the air with vicious shakes. We all seemed to find our spirits rise. Whether it was the purifying of the deadly atmosphere by the opening of the chapel door, or the relief which we experienced by finding ourselves in the open, I know not. But most certainly the shadow of dread seemed to slip from us like a robe, and the occasion of our coming lost something of its grim significance, though we did not slacken a whit in our resolution. We closed the outer door and barred it and locked it, and the bringing of the dogs with us, began our search of the house. We found nothing throughout except for dust in extraordinary proportions, and all untouched save for my own footprints when I had made my first visit. Never once did the dogs exhibit any symptom of uneasiness, and even when we returned to the chapel, they frisked about as though they had been rabbit hunting in a sombre wood. The morning was quickening in the east when we emerged from the front. Dr. Van Helsing had taken the key of the hall door from the bunch and locked the door in orthodox fashion, putting the key into his pocket when he had done. "So far," he said, "our night has been eminently successful. No harm has come to us, such as I feared might be, and yet we have ascertained how many boxes are missing. More than all I do, I rejoice that this, our first, and perhaps our most difficult and dangerous, step has been accomplished without the bringing thereunto our most sweet Madam Mina."
I gotta take Archer to the doctor. He's throwing up, screaming. Kenzie's gonna hold him while I drive.
Okay.
So I'm leaving the kids here. They'll be all right.
All right. Love you too. Give them kisses. All right, where was I? The morning was quickened in the east when we emerged from the front. Dr. Van Helsing had taken the key of the hall door from the bunch and locked the door in orthodox fashion, putting the key into his pocket when he had done. "So far," he said, "our night has been eminently successful. No harm has come to us, such as I feared might be, and yet we have ascertained how many boxes are missing. More than all do I rejoice that this, our first, and perhaps our most difficult and dangerous, step has been accomplished without the bringing thereunto our most sweet Madam Mina, or troubling her waking or sleeping thoughts with sights and sounds and smells of horror, which she might never forget. One lesson, too, we have learned, if it be allowed to argue a particularity, that the brute beasts which are the Count's command are yet themselves not amenable to his spiritual power. For look, these rats that would come to his call, just as from his castle top, come to him. They run pell-mell from the so little dogs of my friend Arthur. We have other. Hold on. I just saw that this new computer keeps blanking off, but it's still going, so I guess that's a good thing, just saving power. But oh, where's the dogs? We have other matters before us, other dangers, other fears, and that monster,
He has not used his power over the brute world for the only or last time tonight. So in some way, in this chess game, which we play for the sake of human souls, and now let us go home. The dawn is close at hand, and we have reason to be content with our first night's work. It may be ordained that we have many nights and days to follow, if full of peril, but we must go on, and from no danger shall we shrink. The house was silent when we got back, save for some poor creature who was screaming away in one of the distant wards, and a low moaning sound from Renfield's room. The poor wretch was doubtless torturing himself after the manner of the insane, with needles, thoughts of pain. I came tiptoe into our own room and found Mina asleep, breathing so softly that I had to put my ear down to hear it. She looks paler than usual. I hope the meeting tonight was not upset to her. I am truly thankful that she is to be left of our own future work, and even of our deliberations. It is too great a strain for a woman to bear. I did not think so at first, but I know better now. Therefore, I am glad that it is settled. There may be things which would frighten her to hear, and yet to conceal them from her might be worse than to tell her if once she suspected that there was any concealment. Henceforth our work is to be sealed, book to her, till at least such time as we can tell her that all is finished, and the earth free from a monster of the netherworld. I'd astray. It will be difficult to begin to keep silence after such confidence as ours, but I must be resolute, and tomorrow I shall keep dark over 2 nights' doings, and shall refuse to speak of anything that happened. I rest on the sofa as not to disturb her. Dr. Seward's Diary. 1 October. It was towards noon when I was awakened by the professor walking into my room. He was more jolly and cheerful than usual, and it was quite evident that last night's work has helped to take some of the brooding weight off of his mind. After going over the adventure of the night, he suddenly said, "Your patient interests me. May it be that with you I visit him this morning? Or if that you are to occupy, I can go alone if it may be. It is new experience to me to find a lunatic who talk philosophy and reason so sound. I had some work to do with which was pressed, so I told him that if he would go alone, I would be glad, as then I should not have to keep him waiting. So I called an attendant and gave him the necessary instructions. Before the professor left the room, I cautioned him against getting any false impression from my patient. But he answered, "I want him to talk of himself and of his delusion as too consuming to his life. He said to Madam Mina, as I see in your diary of yesterday, that he had once had such a belief. Why do you smile, friend John?" "Excuse me," I said, "but the answer is—" I laid my hand on the typewriter matter. "When our sane and learned lunatic made that very statement of how he used to consume life, his mouth was actually nauseous with the flies and spiders he had eaten just before Mrs. Harker entered the room." Van Helsing smiled and turned. "Good," he said. "Your memory is true, friend John. I should have remembered, and yet it is this very obliquity of thought and memory which makes mental disease such a fascinating study. Perhaps I may gain more knowledge out of the folly of this madman than I shall from the teaching of the most wise. Who knows?" I went on with my work, and before long was through that in hand. It seemed that the time had been very short indeed, but there was Van Helsing back in the study. "Do I interrupt?" he asked politely as he stood at the door. "Not at all," I answered. "Come in."
My work is finished, and I am free. I can go with you now, if you like.
It is needless. I have seen him. Well? I fear that he does not appraise me at much. Our interview was short. When I entered the room, he was sitting on a stool in the center, with his elbows on his knees, and his face was the picture of sullen discontent. I spoke to him as cheerfully as I could, and with such a measure of respect as I could assume. He made no reply whatever. "Do you know me?" I asked. His answer was not reassuring. "I know you well enough. You are the old fool Van Helsing. I wish you would know yourself and your idiotic brain theory somewhere else. Damn old thick-headed Dutchman." Not a word more would he say, but sat in his implacable sullenness as indifferent to me as though I had not been in the room at all. Thus departed for this time my chance of much learning from this so clever lunatic. So I shall go, if I may, and cheer myself with a few happy words with that sweet soul, Madam Mina. Friend John, it does rejoice me unspeakable that she is no more to be pained, no more to be worried with our terrible things, though we shall much miss her help. It is better so.
I agree with all my heart,
I answered earnestly,
for I did not know him to weaken in this manner. Miss Harker is better of it. Things are quite bad enough for us all men of the world, and who have been in many tight places in our time, but it is no place for a woman. And if she had remained in touch with the affair, it would in time infallibly have wrecked her. So Van Helsing has gone to confer with Mrs. Harker and Harker. Quincy and Art are both out following up the clues as to the earth boxes. I shall finish my round work, and we shall meet at sunlight.
Well, boys and girls, it appears that things are getting pretty hairy here, and I'm looking, yeah, there's not, I guess I could, but we'd go a little over, and that would shorten our Reddit time, so we're going to go back to Mina Harker's journal next time we do story time, which I believe is going to be on the 20th. But until then, hey, you guys can read Bram Stokers' Dracula on your own. Get your own impressions in there. Sometimes I get a little mixed up, especially when I'm sick and not feeling so well, but I love this book. And I love Dracula. I love Frankenstein. I love all of these stories that kind of went hand in hand with a lot of other things going on in my life as a kid. But yeah, just the different variations of the movies and people's different takes. I really enjoy it and love it. So let's go to our second music break, which I believe, well, how long is this break? Let's look and see. It's a 20-minute and 28-second break. So we got Miss Mia Savage with Lemurian Crypto, and her group is called Antidote for Savages. So we got Lemurian Crypto, Let Me Be Your Home, Not a Phase, and the bottom line, you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
now between fear and love.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. This evening, we have been reading Bram Stokers' Dracula, and it has been quite nice, but it gets a bit monotonous, if you know what I'm saying. So I like to break it up. So first 2 hours, we're going to read Bram Stoker's Dracula. The last third hour, we shall be reading Reddit ghost stories. Super excited. So this one is The Girl with Pigtails. I actually have had one of those here at my house. This is an encounter by somebody from Reddit, which is r/ghost stories. And the person doing the story is u/working_active3175. Encounter, Girl with Pigtails. So, this is not my story, but it's my boyfriend's. When my boyfriend was little, he used to see this girl with pigtails. She would sit at the end of his bed. I asked him if he would talk to her and stuff, but he only remembers her sitting there. She visited him for some time, and after a while it stopped. A few weeks later, he heard his mom talking to his dad about his neighbor, and the neighbor had told his mom about this girl he saw with pigtails, and that he asked her to leave, and she did. So it's not really a crazy story, but it's the first one this close to me that's actually been witnessed by multiple people. My boyfriend never told his mother until he heard the story about his neighbor. They had no idea they both saw this girl until then. Well, isn't that interesting? Guess what? Beavis and Butthead are back and stupider than ever. Mike judges Beavis and Butthead exclusively. You can stream this on Paramount Plus. Use promo code NACHOS for 1 month free. Heck yeah, I'm kind of tempted. So this one is by u/Kevin, KEVINN18RT, Haunted Duplex. When I was about 11 years old, I used to live in a duplex just outside a small town near SF, I'm assuming San Francisco. I remember the house always sort of being unnerving. In fact, I remember sometimes sleeping in my mom's room because of how uncomfortable I felt in mine. One instance I remember was when I was awake at night watching Disney Channel, which I would do sometimes till I fell asleep. When I started to slowly get tired, eventually the point where my eyes stared and started to slowly get heavy. As my eyes were closing, a shadow darts in front of me. Startled, I began to lift my head up and got out of bed. I start to look down the hallway that leads to the main entrance of the duplex and thought it was one of my cousins messing with me until I went upstairs and saw that they were all fast asleep. So I just shrugged it off, thinking I was just dreaming. A month goes by with no activity until one Saturday morning. Me and my cousin are watching cartoons in the living room together when out of nowhere we hear a loud scream coming from the same hallway that leads to the front door. We, thinking it was my grandma that fell down the stairs, I quickly sprint to my mom's room to tell her my grandma was hurt. She then immediately jumps out of bed and runs to the front door only to find no one there. Turns out my grandma was in my aunt's room sleeping, which she often did because my aunt would leave early in the morning to go to work, until she heard us screaming, wondering what the hell just happened. After that, my mom ended up grounding me, thinking I was lying, which as a kid I did a lot, so I wasn't surprised. She didn't believe me, nor did I try to explain myself, 'cause She was never going to believe me. After that, I remember we ended up moving out of the house due to a rat infestation, so that's kind of where that story ends. To this day, I can't really explain those moments. It's kind of crazy when a haunting leads to a manifestation of pests, whether it be cockroaches or rats or mice or whatnot. It's pretty intriguing. This one is a question from you, ACNH _ giveaways 45. Makes me wonder who the heck this is. Rainbow Baby. Question. I was born after a miscarriage, and I've always felt like I had an older brother with me 50% of the time, whenever I am alone. The thing is, my mother never knew the sex of the baby. I've had things happen, like hearing breathing when I was the only one in the room. When this happened, I stopped breathing for a few seconds, but I could still hear it. He's touched my shoulder at least twice, and I've just always felt he was there. Never in a creepy way, but it's still a little weird. My mom also often feels as though someone is missing. I've been Googling if anyone else has had the same thing happen, but I can't find anything, so I thought I'd ask here. I was wondering if any other rainbow babies had someone there with them. And that's pretty interesting. I've heard a lot of different variations of stories where one twin dies, the other one lives, and then they forever have some sort of attachment, which is generally their lost sibling. Pretty intriguing. This one is by you /media hashtag DU, looks like a 1L, hold on. Could be something, yeah, it was something on my screen. DULL. My 5th grade ghost. I have something that happened when I was in 5th grade. If you're interested, please listen to my story and try to debunk what was going on and if it's a real ghost or just my head. When it was lunchtime, me and my friends went to a specific place that we usually go to whenever it's lunchtime. The place was a grass-filled military camp. There was a lot of military trucks and stuff. It was our personal playground climbing the trucks. There was always this inconsistent tapping sound on one of the trucks. It's just a specific truck that's making the tapping sound. At first, we were scared, but we eventually got used to it. But my friend, let's call him Mike saw a beautiful woman with a long white dress. He told everyone what he saw, and of course, we were curious. And we followed him, and he indeed was telling the truth. My friends saw the lady except me, so I was very skeptical. They didn't pay much attention to her, since it was daytime, and it was rude of them to call her a ghost. But I still didn't see her, so I was looking for her, but found nothing. So after 30 minutes, we haven't really seen her since the first time, but Mike and 2 other friends left, and it was just me and 2 of my other friends. Let's call them Gabriel and CJ. Gabriel, CJ, and I were discussing about the white lady that we saw, or they saw, and of course I was joking around because I didn't actually believe it. But they always tell me that it was a ghost, and I got pretty scared. At that time, I remembered the tapping noise. CJ and I searched under the truck for something that triggers the tapping noise, but instead we found the lady's feet on the other side of the truck. She still wore the same white dress. After that, CJ and I got scared, which leads to Gabriel getting scared as well. So we ended up going back to school. At home, I told my grandma I saw a ghost in the military camp. She knows the place since she was a former Marine soldier. I didn't even specify what ghost I saw. I just told her I saw a ghost. That's when she told me that there was a beautiful white lady that was roaming around that camp. Her description matched so much that what we saw was true. I was so freaked out. She told me that the woman was beautiful at day but turns ugly at night. She later added that there was a black-shirted man that hates daylight and tends to hide over shadows. The next day at school, we were hesitant to go back there anymore, but at lunch, I invited Gabriel and CJ to go back there to figure out what was going on. Gabriel was hesitant but accepted since he never actually saw the lady's feet. CJ, however, declined because he was scared. So, after we went to that camp, it's just me and Gabriel. We were trying to find the lady again, but we found nothing. After 20 minutes of searching, I heard that same tapping noise again. It was the truck 5 feet in front of me. I called Gabriel to come here, but he was so far away trying to search for the ghost, so he couldn't hear me. So I decided to look under it myself. But I found myself scared as hell, so I went as far enough as possible so that I was basically 15 feet away from in front of the truck. The tapping noise still continued. I looked under the truck. I was very far, so I couldn't really see much, but after I concentrated, I saw a black figure. A figure hanging from the truck. He was looking straight at me, and that made me freak out so much that I called Gabriel and told him, let's leave. Without any explanation, he was so confused, but I think he saw how scared I was, so went along anyway. After that, I was never going back there again. To this day, I am still puzzled on what's going on. I've never really believed ghosts were real, but after that, I'm starting to doubt myself. This one is by u/Mercy Pills, MERCY, capital PILLZ. My ghost name is Junior. So basically, I was taking a shower, and all of a sudden I see this old man wearing a red and blue flannel white shirt. Hair was white and kind of balding when all of a sudden he takes a small glance at me and continues walking into the room. My mother was in. I call out to my mom and ask her who the man was, and she replied, "What man?" And I gave her the whole rundown, and she didn't believe me. And about a year later, the same man, except he was more shadowy, and I don't know why, but he simply walked behind a door, and since that, I've never seen that place the same. Plus, other members of the family have seen him, and we've named Junior, hence the title, but he's pretty nice. Thank God. It's kind of like our ghost John. He's a really nice guy. He's still trying to fix the thermostat. He doesn't realize we actually turned off the natural gas, and we're just like straightly electric and wood right now. But it's all right, John. Relax. Sit back. Don't worry about that. This one is by u/Travel Walker 1990, The Harbor Inn, Kent. Experience. Back in 2006-7-8, the Harbor Inn pub, Kent, UK, had a paranormal investigator and tarot reader in for the evening doing mostly readings upstairs, where the restaurant bit was. While I was having my tarot done, the investigator stopped and looked over to one of the pillars. He said there was a ghostly figure in Guy Fawkes dress standing behind the pillar and watching us. Apparently, this figure wasn't nice. At first, I couldn't see anything, but then I saw a shadow of a figure on the side of the pillar. When we finished my reading, we went back down to the bar downstairs. As I was walking down the stairs, I looked up and saw a face of the man. I can't remember what he looked like, but he had an old hat on. The owner at the time hated the pub because he kept seeing a lady in an old dress, and whenever he worked, she was randomly there. Later in the evening, the investigator and I went back upstairs and tried talking to this bad ghost man. He kept knocking on doors. I was also told that there was a little boy that kept following me around the pub. The investigator told him that his name was Charlie and that I reminded him of someone he knew. One point in the evening, we were talking with my hands dropped over the chair when I felt a little hand grab around two of my fingers. Nowadays, it's been run by someone else, and I often think if the new owners have had any strange happenings. When I walk past, I look up at the window and smile up to Charlie. Sadly, I couldn't find anything online about the place or the people there. This one is by u/Pike Rob CT. HR and CT are capital. Our pretty awesome ghost and her history, and this is marked as experience. My wife and I moved into our old house in New England in summer 2000. We had looked at dozens of houses, but this one just immediately felt like home. Soon after, we invited our good friend James and his husband up for a weekend. Keep James and his husband in mind. We were pretty well into getting our late-night party on, playing cards, drinking, smoking in the dining room. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw, though the experience was more like perceived, very vividly an older woman with jet black hair sitting next to the old upright piano in the corner. The piano came with the house. We specifically requested that the previous owner include it in the cell because it was so cool, and we didn't have much furniture. It wasn't even slightly scary. In fact, it was just like she was hanging out. I mentioned it to everyone and we laughed it off. Drinking and fun continued through the night. I was never really a ghost believer and still a skeptic 100%. But the rest of this story makes me really wonder. Several weeks later, we met a neighbor from down the street who lived in the neighborhood for 45 years. "You live in the Muriel King house?" she yells or tells us. Muriel was a really interesting lady. She was a famous fashion designer in the 1930s that lived there alone after her husband committed suicide. Very tragic, but she was interesting indeed. Very independent and ahead of her time. She traveled all over the world. She was Greek, I think. Greek, I ask. Weird question, but did she have black hair? Yes, she had jet black hair even when she was an old woman. It was very striking. Yep, I got the chills right then. Many weeks later, I met another neighbor from down the street that had lived there for 60-plus years, and he starts telling me about Muriel. She was a famous fashion designer. She designed gowns from Rita Hayworth and all the classic film stars, and she designed costumes for Broadway plays too. Her parties were legendary, he tells me. She used to have all her gay boyfriends from Broadway come up on the train, and they drink and sing show tunes at the piano in the dining room all night long. Yep, now this all could be coincidental, but it just seems too much so. But she must have been an awesome woman. People from around town have given us some of her original drawings and even unfinished dresses she was working on. There haven't been any more Muriel sightings, but shortly after my wife got pregnant 20 years ago, we both woke up out of a cold sleep at the same time and looked at each other like, what the fuck? And then our bedroom door slammed hard. We like to think that Muriel wasn't a fan of kids. She never had any of her own, so she was like, later y'all, I'm out of here. That's my story. Thanks for reading. This one is by u/noodles27. Noodles is Nootles 27. Visited by a woman and shadow figure while recovering from surgery. Under experience. I just had surgery on Monday, and I am out of work for the next 3 weeks. I believe I have always been sensitive since a young age. Before surgery, people would ask if I'm nervous about surgery, and I'd honestly tell them that I am not nervous. I trust my doctors, and I'm at peace if something happens and I die. I told them the only thing I was nervous about was becoming a super psychic and not getting any sleep for the rest of my life because I have ghosts visiting me while I'm sleeping. People would laugh and say, "That's so me," and we all went on with our days. Well, as soon as I came home, I felt like there were so many spirits in my room. I even saw a shadow person in the corner of my room, which isn't an uncommon occurrence. Knowing that I was just coming out from anesthesia and I was pretty drugged up, I didn't necessarily believe what I was seeing. I especially keep seeing this woman, which I can't see her face, and she was wearing late 40s, early 50s clothes, just walking in and out of my room. I just associated this with me being drugged up. At night, I'd be visited by the shadow person and not getting a lot of sleep, and during the day, it was this woman, and I somehow was able to get sleep. Well, I didn't believe these could be real until one afternoon I was by myself for an hour while my caretaker had to go into work and finish up some things. I was napping on my bed and my cat was sleeping on my legs. I heard what sounded like someone opening kitchen cabinets, hearing noises of things moving in the living room, and I'm thinking my sister has come back from work. I hear a swishing, shuffling, walking sound down the hallway and saw a woman in the 40s/50s dress go straight into her sister's room. My cat's head shot up, and he just stared into her room for the longest time. I saw his ears perk and move when he heard what sounded like her dresser drawers opening and closing. Then my cat relaxed after we stopped hearing anything, and I did too. I texted my sister, and she had a mild panic attack because she couldn't remember locking the front door after she left. She rushed home to make sure someone wasn't actually in the house. She didn't find anything, and we went through possible noise causes. She was nervous because she knew of my abilities, but I was always reassured by her that I could take care of the house and make it a safe place even with visiting spirits. And I always have, but since I'm recovering and not totally mentally here because of the drugs, I know I'm not as strong, and I'm definitely in a weakened state to fight off the negative spirits. Well, the next day, my mother is staying with me, so my sister goes to work. I'm not supposed to be lifting anything, 2 pounds or more, so they are my hands right now. I remember just resting in the living room while my mom was in our office, working from home. I saw the woman walk by me into the kitchen and she disappeared. I never get a threatening feeling from her, and honestly, I feel quite safe when I see her. At this moment, I get a text message from my boyfriend while he's at work. For some reason, when he was a ghost experiencer, I'm having something simultaneously. Usually, these are much darker spirit experiences. He told me he was on his forklift and saw above him something in the shape of a human, but he didn't give off real human vibes. It was just clinging to the ceiling and then disappeared. Every time that day he saw this thing that was always staring at him threateningly, I always saw or felt this woman nearby me. I'm wondering now if this woman is my protector while I'm going through my surgery in my weakened state. I feel very blessed now to see her, and I'm not scared. My cat doesn't seem to be nervous either. I haven't seen the shadow person much since I've seen an increase of her. My sister jokes now when I tell her when I see the woman. If I see her go into the kitchen, my sister says, "Oh, she's telling me I need to do the dishes. It's filthy in there." Or yesterday when I saw my bedroom curtain move like someone walked by it and I heard a weird sound, my sister recreated it and stubbed her toe on the stepladder I've been using to get into bed, which made the exact sound I heard. She said, well, I guess even ghosts can stub their toes when they come to check in on you. I don't know why I'm telling this story, but I guess I'm curious if other people who have had surgery have had an increase of paranormal activity. This person's looking for a ghost story. Let's go to this next one. This one is by u/Ice Peak Baby, and it's called Paranormal Experience in Old Hotel in Germany. For the past 2 weeks, my family and I have been traveling around various countries in Europe. Unfortunately, we had our passports stolen in Belgium and had to make a couple last-minute changes to our plans, one of which included booking a hotel in a new city for one night. We stopped for just the night between trains in Cologne, Germany. I helped my parents find the last-minute reservation online, and it was pretty standard apartment-style rental. When we arrived at the rental, we were all impressed by the views of the nearby cathedral and church spires. The shingled roofs, just the general feel of history that the whole town had. We went out for dinner and came back after dark, all heading to bed for our early train the next morning. I shared a room with my little brother, and my parents slept in the next room over. I remember asking them if we could swap rooms because I didn't like the layout of ours. There was too many doors for me to feel comfortable. I have a weird thing where I don't like sleeping near doors, and I can't sleep in a room with any doors left open. Anyways, they said no, we could just stay in the original room, which had doors to the kitchen, hallway, and 2 closets. I was too tired to push it, and I figured my fatigue would override my personal habits, so I just got ready for bed and tried to go to sleep. While I was sleeping, I remember having some cycles of regular dreams. Then all of a sudden, I woke up with another dream. I was lying in the same bed in the exact same room, and my little brother was lying in the same bed too. It felt exactly like if I had just woken up normally. Now, I have very vivid dreams sometimes, but I never dream about being in the exact room I'm in, and I never wake up in a room within a dream. In this dream, I was sitting up in bed, and so was my brother. I could feel that for some reason we were both really scared, and there was this charged and anxious feeling in the room. I remember my little brother saying, "What is that? Get out your flashlight." At the same time, we were both looking at the far end of the room, where it was darker and away from windows. It was like, oh, hold on, it just skipped. It was like we were both too scared to speak, but I could feel that we were both sensing whatever dark energy was at the end of the room. I started to fumble for my phone flashlight just for some light when all of a sudden this thing, the closest I can describe it as is a dark blob of energy, moved super quickly over next to my side of the bed, and my brother and I screamed at the same time as this thing rushed up next to me. That's exactly when I woke up for real around 2:30 a.m. My heart was racing, and I was sweating so hard despite the room not being hot. I was so unsettled that I turned on all the lights in the room and didn't sleep for about 2 hours until I could finally somewhat relax and drifted back to sleep. This experience was very disturbing for me. I never wake up early in the morning for no reason as usual. I sleep through the night and rarely, if ever, have nightmares. Now I'm wondering if anyone can comment on a phenomenon like this. Can people have paranormal encounters in their sleep while in certain spaces? Was I just having a vivid dream, or was that experience a signal that there was something in that space? This one's by u/byzone06, that's capital B, lowercase yzone 06. My house might be haunted. So everything started about 7 months ago in December 2021. Was one of my first nights being home alone. I had been home alone hundreds of times for the day, but this was one of the first through the night. I was playing games on my computer when I heard my dog start barking hysterically. My dog is not one to just bark at nothing, especially not in the house. So I knew something was up and went to check on her, and she was alerting to something down the hallway to the front door. She started growling, then I heard the lock on the front door knocking back and forth. I immediately thought that someone was trying to break in, and the lock was rattling for about 20 seconds before it stopped. Then a few seconds later, I heard 3 thumping, creaking footsteps above my upstairs. This freaked me the fuck out, so I checked every room upstairs and checked the camera outside, and there was nothing. There was a glass storm door on the outside of the front door, so whatever was moving the lock was from inside of the house. That was it for a few months, so I kind of forgot about it until my dad started asking me if me or my mom were walking around upstairs in the middle of the night. Neither of us were up, and my dad said that he kept hearing footsteps and faint talking for 4 days before it stopped. And a few nights ago, I was up at around 2 a.m. when my parents were asleep and could have sworn I saw someone about 8 foot tall standing in the pitch black living room. We have always noticed over the past few months that small things like soap bars, screwdrivers, and yarn would go missing for a few weeks and turn up somewhere completely different and out of place. The first event in December was about a month after my grandfather passed away, so I like to think that this is him giving us signs, but every time something happens, it feels like my heart stops, like something isn't just messing with us for fun. It's a very weird sensation. Any insight would be helpful. This is by u/a man with a small brain. My brother saw a floating mask in his room is the title. This happened a long time ago. My brother is now 28 and is doing fine, but this happened to him when he was 17. Please excuse my punctuation or enunciation because I have a mental disorder, but anyways. So this story takes place in the dead of night when my brother was sleeping and my parents were sleeping. He was sleeping when out of nowhere he woke up and realized he couldn't move his limbs or his head. That's when he realized he had sleep paralysis. So he started looking around his room. But then something caught his eye. A mask that was sitting on a table was floating in the air, and this had freaked him out. He was so scared that he tried moving but was stuck. The mask then came close to him, and as it was coming close to his face, it started backing up, and as it was doing that, the mask hit a clay statue that was sitting on a shelf. It fell off his shelf and had shattered into a million pieces. Then our mom came into his room and asked, "Why did you break that?" And my brother, still in bed, utters the words, "But I didn't." My mom then sighed and left the room, leaving my brother to calm down and assess what happened. He picks up the pieces from the statue, then throws it away. My brother has told this story many times, and still to this day, he doesn't know what to say about it. Unfortunately, our mom had passed away to a meth overdose, which saddens me and personally me. I don't know what to think of this story. Part of me thinks my brother saw a demon or a ghost, but I don't know. What do you guys think? This story is by you, Loving Horror, which horror is spelled Horrer. The title is Whispers. Excuse me. Before I say anything, this is my first Reddit post, and I don't really remember every detail of this event, so sorry if it goes from event to event fast. So one day in 2020, I don't remember the specific month, my mother left the house for the day, so I was the only one there, and I was just sitting in my room when I heard a whisper of my name, and it was a very tiny, quiet whisper that was straight in my ear. After that, I started crying and got kind of creeped out, so I went to the bathroom to collect myself and try not to overthink it and just calm down overall. So I walked to the bathroom, and I was already on edge, so I ran to the bathroom and then slammed the door behind me once I got in. Right when I looked in the mirror, I heard the whispers again, but this time it started out quiet, and every time I heard my name, the voice got deeper and deeper and deeper, vocally and deeper into my head like it was in my ears. After that happened, I was freaking out and called my mother crying. When I told her, she didn't act worried, as if it was okay. I also have another thing that happened when I was babysat, my youngest brother and I. This also happened in 2020, but I also have no idea when. While babysitting my little brother, he came into my room and told me he was hungry, so I went downstairs with him, and when we got to the kitchen, I stood behind him when he was in front of the fridge. I felt breathing on my neck and felt my name. I don't know how to explain how I felt my name, but that's the only way I can explain it. I immediately started crying and told my brother to go upstairs and got a knife and went around the house checking every room. Sorry if this was kind of long, but it feels good to get it off my chest since the only person I've told didn't take me seriously. I have no idea if it was a ghost, spirit, or if I'm just crazy. This one is by you / hashtag I'm _a_ weirdo. 3 stories. Okay, so I haven't experienced any of these stories, but I got all the stories from 2 of my cousins and my sister, but 2 stories linked together. First story is from my cousin. Let's call her Amy. One night, she was sleeping over at our grandmother's house and was woken from something alerting her. Apparently, it was a noise from downstairs. Being curious but also ready to hit at any intruder, she headed downstairs and into the living room and saw her dead great-grandmother. We haven't ever met her, but we know what she looked like because of photo albums we were shown multiple times growing up. Amy told me about it the next day since I was coming to visit. I lived 4 hours away at the time. We have been keeping it a secret from people for a while now. I don't think she got much sleep for the next couple days. Amy stayed there. Next story is from my other cousin. Let's call him Ben. And it links into the first story. Some similar things happened again. He heard a noise from downstairs, and he was younger than Amy when she had it happen, so he wasn't as cautious, but he headed downstairs. That when he saw her great-grandmother, he didn't know it was her since he never saw her photos as much as me and Amy did. He ended up, hold on, I just skipped ahead. He ended up staying awake that night because he was scared. He kept it a secret for a while, but he did end up telling Amy, who told me. Oh my gosh, I keep skipping. When he told us what he saw, we pieced that it was our great-grandmother from the description he gave to Amy. I don't think anyone else in the family has experienced this since my grandmother only moved in there a few years before our great-grandmother's death, so
All my aunt and uncles already moved out, and us kids nearly ever stayed the night. We haven't told anyone either. Our grandmother has since moved from the house as well. Number 3. Last story is from my sister. Let's call her Kim. This was in my old house at the time. My mom, sister, and me lived in the house. We moved there to be closer to the family. We were about to move again to the house we currently live in, so we were taking pictures of our house so we could sell it to and my sister took up the job of taking pictures of our connected dining room and living room. In the house, the fridge was in the dining room because there wasn't enough room in the kitchen. She finished the pictures for the living room and had only one picture to go for the dining room. The last picture was of the fridge to the left, back door in the middle, and could see some of the dining table to the right. Took the photo but didn't check it fully since it was late and really dark outside. The next day, my mom was posting the photos but saw something strange. It looked like there was people in the picture, but when the picture was taken, no one was in the way of the photo and people was faded, like how you would expect ghosts to be. Anyway, there was 3 people in the picture, a young boy, probably around 12, a woman who looked around late 20s to early 30s, and a man who looked around 30s to early 40s. They also were dressed weird, like they were dressed to fit into the Victorian-style clothes. The man had stood in front of the fridge. The fridge was sideways in the photo, so he was stood next to the fridge, but to the photo it was in front. The lady and the boy was outside looking into the house through the back door, and they looked sad as they were locked outside of something. My mum nor sister remembers this since it happened a while ago, and I don't know if you can take pictures of ghosts, but I'm just typing what I've heard. I would really like to know if these stories could be possibly true because I'm really interested to know, but that's all I have to say, so goodbye. Sorry, you guys, I had to mute there real quick so I could blow my schnoz. This cold isn't too bad, but yeah, I slept a lot today, and my nose is really raw from blowing it so much, but that is our Bram Stokers Dracula, as well as our Reddit ghost stories. I hope you guys enjoyed the show this evening as I did. I can't wait to do it again. As I said, tomorrow night, we have Mr. Jeff Hilliard in the house. I am super stoked about that. I hope you guys join us. I can't wait to hear about where he got his musical ideals, enterprise, etc., where he comes up with the ideas for his videos and all the awards that he's won. He's won so many awards. It's really amazing what he's done for his musical career. I'm super proud of him. He's such an awesome guy. So you guys tune in tomorrow night. We have Mr. Jeff Hilliard on. Thank you so much once again for joining us this evening for We Are Paradox Media's Story Time with me, TessaTNT, on Late Night in the Rockies. It was a pleasure having you and reading to you from Bram Stokers' Dracula as well as Reddit ghost stories. And thank you to all of our friends on We Are Paradox Media's KPNL Radio, Facebook, Twitter, iHeartRadio, and wherever else you may be listening beyond the Omniverse tonight. I had a wonderful time this evening, and I can't wait to do it again. Like I said, tomorrow night we have Mr. Jeff Hilliard on, so make sure you tune in. Don't forget, we are all in this together. Together, we can make the world a little better, and together, my friends, we are Paradox Media, because without you, there is no us. If you would like to join us for the Skype after party, look me up and send me a contact request at live:"Tessa.N.Thomas30" or give us a jingle at 970-335-9596.
Until next time, nighty night, love and light. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you back here, same time, same batty place.